Hello everyone, Wade from High Tech Legion here. And with over 1,500 videos uploaded, if you haven't seen it here, you may not have seen it anywhere. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you a quick overview of the Fractal Design Core 3300 mid-tower computer case. And then I'm also going to be doing a component installation in this same video, so we'll get to see how a full system in this goes together and make sure that things fit properly and see how good of a job Fractal Design did on this setup. So first things first, let's just take a look at the size of the case a little bit. So what we got here is about 9.5 inches wide, and you got 17.5 inches tall, and then the depth on it is about 21 inches deep. So it's definitely a little bit wider than a lot of other mid-towers. You can sort of see that here that I've worked with. It's also got a nice depth and a nice height. So it's on the larger side of a mid-tower, definitely. But let's take a closer look at the specific features of the case and get to the component installation for you. So here we have a quick look at the front panel of the Core 3300. You can see that it is definitely a wide body mid-tower case, and it's very simple design here. It is a plastic bezel, though there is a little texture on it to make it look a little nicer. You have the Fractal Design logo at the bottom. You've got some mesh going down both sides of it for airflow, and two 5¼ inch drive external punch outs here for optical drives or anything else that you might want to put in them that would fit in that form factor. On the top of the case, you have your front panel right here. You've got a power button, a reset button, hard drive indicator light, headphone jack, microphone jack, and two USB 3.0 ports. We'll also notice that there are some fan mounting locations here. We've got two fan mounting locations that support both 120mm and 140mm fans. It will also support a radiator in the top of the case, so 240mm or 280mm radiator. So definitely set up for liquid cooling if you want to be using that. On the external of the side here, we've got another mounting location here for a 120mm or 140mm fan. And then on the rear, we have a 140mm fan included, doing some exhaust. We've got our I/O panel section, and we've got 7 expansion slots, as well as the bottom mount power supply. Both side panels are held on with thumb screws, so those are easy to open up. And now let's take a quick look at the inside of the case, and then we'll get on with our component installation. Here we have the inside of the case. I've pulled off both side panels so that we can get a good look at the internals. First thing we'll notice here is we have this vertical hard drive mounting. This is designed to hold 3 3.5 inch hard drives as well as 3 2.5 inch hard drives or SSDs. So you're able to put the 2.5 inch hard drives on the outside, and then all the 3.5 inch hard drives vertically on the inside. What this does is it leaves the entire front of the case open for putting water cooling into the case. You also have a mounting location here on the bottom where you can put a fan and rubber feet for your power supply. On the back is our motherboard tray. You can see that there are definitely some cutouts there for your cable management purposes, and a nice large cutout for working with your CPU cooler. Up here are our 2 locations for a 5¼ inch drive bay. Now say you wanted to not use an optical drive and you wanted to still be able to mount your hard drives in here. Of course you can get a conversion kit to go from 5.25 to 3.5 or 2.5 inch drives, and this whole vertical thing, hard drive mounting, pulls out very easily. There are 2 thumb screws here, and you got a thumb screw on the bottom, and that whole section will come out. So this case is really designed for water cooling and being able to optimally place whatever you want in this case. So especially at around $89. It's got a very good flexibility there for if you're into modding, or if you just want to put a nice water cooling setup into something that's not a massive full tower case. So we've got two 140 millimeter fans included. We mentioned the one on the rear. There's also one in the front that you can sort of see here. These do take a 3-pin fan connector. And in my component installation, I'm going to be putting a full-size motherboard in, full-size hard drive, one full-size SSD, optical drive, and 240 millimeter rad, and with just 2 fans on it. And then, of course, plugging in the existing fans and our power supply. So let's start putting components into this case, and we can see how well they go together with this definitely different design. One other thing I definitely want to show you that I just realized I didn't is you got your front panel connectors in here already for your USB 3, as well as for all your power switches and reset switches, power LEDs, and the hard drive LEDs, as well as your HD audio connection. So let's put the power supply in first, then I'm going to put the motherboard in after I install the standoffs for the motherboard, and then we'll see how the installation continues with this. Our power supply installation is very simple on this. All we do is place the power supply in the bottom here on the rubber feet. This is set up so you can flip it either way on the fan on the bottom. However, there is a filter here on the bottom, so it will keep the dust out of the intake of the power supply. Then we take our included power supply screws, this type here, and then we can put the 4 of them in the back of the power supply, and everything will be secured. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to mount the power supply with the 4 screws and run a couple of the cables through the back here just to get them out of the way in the meantime. The power supply is mounted, and I have all the cables just kind of run through the back of it right now just to keep them out of the way while we're installing the motherboard. I also installed my I/O panel here for the motherboard, and we'll be putting in the standoffs now. One thing that's nice here is they do have the standoff locations stamped with A and M so that you know where the standoffs need to go for ATX and micro ATX motherboards. I am going to be installing the MSI Z97 X-Power motherboard into this. It is a little large for this case, actually, because it's an extended ATX motherboard, so we'll see how that goes. They do include a little standoff tool here for installing the brass standoffs, so we'll be using that. Put the standoff into the tool here, and then use a Phillips head screwdriver to put them into the case. Here we have our motherboard installed. This is an e-atx, extended ATX motherboard like I mentioned before. It does fit into this case easily, even though it's not specifically designed to hold it. The only thing that you'll notice is that some of the cable management holes are covered up a little bit. In this, I really don't think is going to be a big deal, because right here, these are all thin cables for the SATA, and also for our front panel going to be coming through here. The only one that might be a little bit of a challenge is the 24-pin ATX, and I think even that will be able to still squeeze through that amount of space. I've also installed my memory into the system board and my 4770K processor into the system board right here. And next I want to put in the Sadon 240M radiator with just 2 fans on it into the case, and we'll put that onto the CPU for cooling. Now we have our Sadon 240M installed into the top of the case here with 2 fans exhausting air out the top, and it is also installed, the water block is also installed onto the CPU cooler. We also have our power connectors hooked up before we installed that, and the 2 fans for this are hooked up to the fan headers, CPU fan headers above here. And I also have the pump hooked into a 3-pin optional fan connector over here on the right. So we've got our memory, we've got our cooler and processor, the motherboard is installed, the processor's installed. We also have the 2 included fans plugged into the bottom here on the motherboard. And next I definitely want to get my front panel all set and get the 24-pin power connector plugged in, and then I'm also going to install both the 2.5-inch and the 3.5-inch hard drives onto the rack here. One thing I definitely forgot to mention is there are also two 2.5-inch drive connections on the rear of the chassis here. Ultimately, that's probably where I'm going to put my SSD, since I won't be using a larger mechanical hard drive with this machine. But I do want to show you the installation of the SSD and the 3.5-inch drives on this vertical mount here. So I will be doing that in the video. So let's get those cables hooked up, and then I will show you the hard drive installation. Here we have our hard drive installations. First thing I did was pull the bracket, because I feel like that's definitely the easiest thing to do. Another hint, install your SSD first. If you want to use them, line them up. I offset them because I want to show you the two different installations, but definitely if you wanted to put the two drives face to face, like this supports the 3.5-inch drives and the 2.5-inch drives, put the SSDs on first, then put your 3.5-inch hard drives in. So this is really simple. They offset these so that you can put the 3.5-inch screws in through the rubber grommets. You install your 2.5-inch drive using the screws that they say in their installation guide for the SSDs. Put those in, flip it around, use your longer screws with the large flat head and put them through the rubber grommets and screw those into your 3.5-inch drives. So you've got a very simple hard drive installation here. They're also very secure on this mounting bracket, and like I said, there's two SSD locations on the back, so if you did want to use a 2.5-inch mechanical drive and a 2.5-inch SSD and no larger mechanical drive, you certainly have that option, or just two SSDs on the back. That's all up to you and your system. But this is the simple hard drive installation, and here's the other hint. This drops in here and it slides to the right and lines up with the holes here, where you then are going to just put your thumb screws back in to hold this bracket back in place. And then of course don't forget about the thumb screw on the bottom that holds it in place down at the bottom. Once that's done, of course, hook up your cables for your SATA power and your SATA data, and you're good to go with your hard drives. Here we have the cables hooked up to the hard drives. Just wanted to show you that it looks pretty nifty the way they have this set up. And if you don't put that second fan in the front at the bottom, you can kind of tuck some of the cables away in that section. Next, let's install the optical drive, and then finally we will put the GPU in and fire this up. Install the optical drive. Very simple. There's a little slot on the bottom of the bezel that you can stick your hand into, and you just pull straight forward and the bezel pops off. Of course, we have the filler pieces in the top, so what you're going to want to do is take your hand here and just push these in, and they actually push out the front. Up in the top here, you'll see that there is no, let me just adjust the camera here for a second. There's no metal piece in the top one here, so once you've done that, you're pretty much all set to pop the bezel back on. Again, just line up the little clips and push it in securely, and it will clip into place. Then you're going to take your optical drive and slide it right into that top bay. This is a really simple installation. It slides into the top bay, and then you have thumb screws that are provided for you with the case that you can use to secure the optical drive in place. So we'll put the thumb screws in on both sides, and then you would connect up your SATA data and your SATA power cable to your optical drive, just like we did with our hard drives. That's how simple the optical drive installation is if you do intend to use one. So that's very nice. And now let's get our graphics card installed, and then we can fire up this machine and check it out. Here we have everything installed. As you can see, we put the GPU actually in the second slot for this motherboard, since that's what's recommended. So all we had to do was take the 2 thumb screws out, take the 2 filler pieces out, which are a nice thick metal, so they're not going to get bent easily. And if you decide to move your cards around, you can stick these back in and still have them fill up the space. They also have a little bit of venting on them, which, in case you didn't notice that. All our cables are plugged in, everything's all set. So what I'm going to do now is just plug the power supply in and hit the power button so we can see how this thing runs. And then I will put the side panels on as well so that we can see how quiet it is. So the system is alive. Our 2 fans that are pre-installed are running. The fans on our GPU are running. The fan on our power supply is running. The pump is running, and the 2 fans for the SATA are running. And as you can see, it's pretty quiet. So once we put the side panels on, it'll be even quieter, I think. Before I close up the last side panel, I just wanted to mention the cable management on this case is very good. As you can see, we've got plenty of places to tie off cables to, and everything, there's plenty of room back here too, even for our 24-pin cable without an issue. We've got all these other cables coming through here too, and there's tie downs all down the center here. The only thing I would say is missing is sometimes it's nice to be able to tie something down over on the right side, right behind the motherboard. But that's, you know, as far as that missing, that's nothing really that would bother me too much, because I was able to run everything down the center and tie it down without an issue. So let me put that other side panel on, and then we'll give our final thoughts. So now that we have the whole build together and the system running, I'm going to run some temperature testing on it, and we'll show you the benchmarks. So final thoughts, definitely, it keeps the system very cool considering it comes with the 240mm fans. Of course, we have our SATA 240M radiator in the top as well. Relatively silent. It is a steel case, of course, but it is relatively silent considering that there are 240mm fans, the 2 SATA fans, as well as the 2 fans on the GPU, the pump running for the cooler, CPU cooler, and even a mechanical hard drive in here. So as far as being audible, don't hear it at all. Build quality, I like the steel build. It's nice and thick. It doesn't really flex. The bezel is plastic, so if you really aren't into plastic bezels, you're probably not going to like this case, but considering the price range, that's to be expected pretty much, and it's a nice bezel considering it's plastic. So, final thoughts, great build, great case, easy to work with, can put just about anything I want into it, even that extended ATX motherboard, radiators, long graphics cards, and I really like the innovative hard drive mounting that they did on this with that vertical bar if you wanted to put 3.5-inch drives and 2.5-inch drives. Now, of course, they made it so you can pull that out, and they put spots for 2.5-inch drives on the back of the motherboard tray as well. That's just thinking on their part that maybe somebody wants to put something bigger in here, so let's allow them to pull that hard drive cage and give them another option. So you've got options, you've got flexibility, it works nicely, it's quiet, it keeps things cool. I definitely would say that this case wins an Editor's Choice Award from High Tech Legion. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope the component installation was helpful for you. And please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Take care.